So, um, I want you to picture a scenario. And I'm sharing this right off the bat because it's an almost universally familiar rhythm,
Oh, absolutely.
right? And frankly, it's an incredibly embarrassing one to admit.
They usually are.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you're in pursuit of this massive life-altering goal. You've been putting in the work. And for this like fleeting season, everything just clicks into place.
It's the best feeling.
It is. You're operating with this overwhelming intensity and you're just shattering these old barriers that used to hold you back.
You're just completely in the zone.
Exactly. You secure a major victory, or maybe you reach this entirely new pinnacle of momentum. The air feels crisp, your mind is sharp, and you think to yourself, I finally figured it out.
This is my new normal.
Yes. But you tell yourself, I am officially a highly productive, successful person now.
And I mean, it's a beautiful feeling while it lasts. The momentum just feels completely unstoppable.
Right. But then, almost inexplicably, everything derails. And I mean spectacularly.
It always crashes, doesn't it?
So hard. Like, I'll give you a personal example. The night before, the most significant presentation of my career, a moment I'd been working toward for an endless tide of months, I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Let me guess. You didn't go to sleep early.
Nope. I didn't review my notes either. Instead, at midnight, I found myself sitting on my kitchen floor, intensely furious.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I picked a completely unnecessary fight with my partner about the quote-unquote correct way to load the dishwasher.
Wow. Over the dishwasher.
Literally, practically trembling with rage over a spoon.
That is amazing.
It's terrible. Or, maybe for the listener, it isn't an argument. Maybe it's this sudden wave of heavy lethargy that washes over you, just paralyzing your ambition.
Or you physically fall ill, like right before you're about to cross that final threshold of success.
Yes, the mysterious cold. It's a devastatingly common pattern.
Hearing you describe that midnight argument over a spoon is honestly almost painfully textbook.
Wait, really? Textbook.
Oh, absolutely. The moment of maximum velocity is instantly followed by a catastrophic snapback.
Exactly. And the core confusion here for so many of us is, why does this happen?
Right.
Why, at the exact moment we finally grasp what we've been striving for, do we seemingly tear it all down?
It's so frustrating.
Culturally, we almost always label this as a lack of discipline. We call it bad luck, or we internalize it as this fundamental personal failure.
We tell ourselves we just didn't want it badly enough.
Yeah, or that we're just inherently flawed somehow.
And that right there is the precise illusion we are entirely dismantling today.
I am so ready for this.
We are unpacking the hidden mechanics of human output and self-sabotage.
Our entire mission today is to understand these invisible forces, right? The ones that dictate our baseline of success.
Exactly. We're going to entirely rebuild the architecture of how we execute our ambitions.
And hopefully strip away that immense guilt I felt on the kitchen floor.
That's the goal. We're replacing the guilt with pure systemic understanding. We're going to move from the invisible programming of our nervous systems right into the actual physics of human focus.
And we'll eventually arrive at this radical new way to view the passage of time and our own progress.
It's going to be an incredible exploration.
I'm absolutely here for this. But I have to push back a little right at the start.
Sure, go for it.
Are you seriously telling me that picking a fight over kitchen utensils the night before, a career-defining moment, isn't just me being a fundamentally chaotic person?
I am absolutely telling you that.
Because in the moment, it felt like a massive character flaw.
It wasn't. To lay the foundation for why it wasn't, we need to talk about the concept of the internal thermostat.
Okay. The thermostat metaphor. I like this one.
Let's use an environmental thermostat like the one mounted on the wall of your living room as our anchor here.
Makes sense.
You set it to a comfortable equilibrium, say room temperature.
Right.
Now, if you fling the windows open in the bitter cold, the temperature obviously plummets.
Yeah, it gets freezing.
But the thermostat doesn't panic. It doesn't judge you for opening the window.
It just reacts.
Exactly. The furnace simply ignites. It pushes relentless heat until the room returns to that exact original setting.
And if the room gets sweltering, the cooling mechanisms kick in to pull it back down.
Precisely. The thermostat has no moral judgment whatsoever. It simply defends the baseline.
Okay, I follow the mechanics of a literal thermostat.
Yeah.
It's just a blind system protecting a predetermined normal.
Yes.
But how does this map onto human ambition? Because consciously, I want the temperature of my life to be soaring.
Of course you do.
I want the success, the great relationships, the financial abundance. I want it hot.
That is the perfect mechanical equivalent for what's happening inside the human psyche. But we have to separate your conscious desires from your unconscious programming.
Okay, separate them how?
We operate on an identical, completely invisible psychological mechanism. Every single one of us possesses an internal set point.
Like an invisible dial.
Yes. And this set point regulates the exact magnitude of success, the intensity of joy, and the absolute threshold of abundance that we're actually willing to tolerate.
Wait, that we're willing to tolerate.
Yes. When you experience that intense surge of progress you described earlier, a surge that far exceeds your internal setting, your system freaks out.
Because it's too hot.
Exactly. Your internal system views that brilliant success not as a victory, but as an error.
Wait, an error. My brain views landing a massive promotion or having an incredibly loving week with my partner as a system failure.
Precisely. Because a system built for equilibrium will aggressively course correct to drag you back to the familiar baseline.
Oh, wow.
To your internal thermostat, familiar equals safe.
Even if the familiar is, like, miserable.
Especially then, even if it's chaotic or exhausting, if your baseline setting is calibrated for a life of high stress and moderate achievement, a sudden spike of profound peace registers as a terrifying anomaly.
So it triggers an override.
It absolutely triggers an override. It turns on the air conditioning to cool off your success.
That is wild. But hold on. Let's say I realize I'm doing this.
Okay.
If I catch myself sitting on the kitchen floor at midnight, about to start that argument, can I just push through that correction with sheer willpower?
You can try.
I mean, if I feel myself self-sabotaging, can I just grit my teeth, force my mouth shut, and force the temperature to stay high?
That is the tragedy of relying on brute force, really. And it's why so much modern productivity advice fails over an extended horizon.
Because we just run out of steam.
Exactly. Think about what willpower actually is. Willpower is an inexhaustible spark.
It's not endless.
Right. It requires enormous conscious metabolic energy to maintain. You can force yourself to be perfectly disciplined for a solitary fraction of time, sure.
But eventually?
Eventually, the internal thermostat wins. It's an endless systemic tide. It runs in the background, entirely automated, requiring zero conscious effort.
Oh, I see. It's like trying to hold your breath underwater.
That is a phenomenal way to picture it.
Right. You could do it for a little while through sheer force of will. But eventually, your body's autonomous demand for oxygen is going to completely overwhelm your conscious mind.
And you'll gasp for air.
You have to. You can't out-willpower biology.
Exactly. If you try to manually hold the temperature of your life at a blistering high through pure discipline, what happens when you get tired?
I slip up.
The very second your attention wavers, the second you get hungry or distracted, and that spark of willpower flickers out, the automated system takes over.
The system always, inevitably, wins a battle of attrition.
It has to. It has endless energy. You don't.
So if willpower is just a losing game, where does this thermostat setting even come from?
That's the real question.
If I genuinely want phenomenal success, why is my thermostat seemingly set to comfortable mediocrity? Did I, do this to myself?
You didn't consciously choose it, no. That setting was calibrated in the dawn of your personal history.
You mean childhood?
Yes. Long before you had the cognitive architecture to critically evaluate your surroundings, your thermostat was being programmed.
Programmed by what?
By a vast constellation of repetitive external inputs. It was shaped by the subtle assumptions of your early caregivers, for one.
Okay, so the adults around me.
Right. Plus the financial dynamics of your household, the social dynamics of your peer groups, and the perceived limitations of the environment you absorbed.
So if I grew up in an environment where money was a constant source of loud, terrifying arguments,
Yes, exactly.
my thermostat might naturally set financial abundance as a threat condition.
Absolutely. Over the passage of eras, these repeated early experiences hardened into what we can call an identity ceiling.
An identity ceiling. I like that phrasing.
And what makes it so incredibly insidious is that from the inside, this identity ceiling feels utterly rational.
It doesn't feel like trauma or programming.
Not at all. It doesn't feel like a limitation imposed by your past. It feels like objective reality.
You just believe you are simply being realistic about your capabilities and your place in the world.
Exactly. You think, I'm just a realist.
Here's the part that terrifies me a little bit, though.
What's that?
When we hit that ceiling, when we touch that upper limit, the sabotage doesn't look like deliberate self-harm.
It rarely does.
It disguises itself flawlessly. Going back to my dishwasher argument, in that exact moment, I genuinely believed the structural integrity of our household depended on how the plates were organized.
You felt entirely justified.
I really did. The
Yes.
sudden anxiety feels completely rational. The manufactured distractions feel like extremely urgent priorities.
Your system creates a perfectly logical excuse to halt your progress. It is brilliant at camouflage.
It really is. It manufactures disruptions that feel so legitimate.
It does that, so you point your finger at external circumstances rather than recognizing the internal regulation at play.
I blame the spoon. I blame my partner.
You blame the traffic, you blame a sudden migraine.
Anything but myself.
Right. And beneath this sabotage, if you trace the roots downward past the immediate excuse, you will almost always find a profound, primitive fear.
A primitive fear. What
Yeah.
kind of fear? Because I certainly didn't feel afraid of succeeding at my presentation. I felt excited.
Consciously, yes, you felt excited. But subconsciously, there's often the fear of outgrowing one's social circle.
Oh, wow.
We harbor this ancient biological terror of isolation. It's the deep-seated belief that if we ascend too high or if we change too much, we will be cast out of our tribe.
And left to survive alone, which
Yeah.
to early humans meant death.
Exactly. If everyone you know constantly complains about being broke and tired, and suddenly you are wealthy and energized,
I no longer fit the group dynamic.
right, you become a foreign element.
So success physically threatens our sense of belonging. That's heavy.
It is deeply heavy. Alternatively, there's the biological vulnerability of becoming highly visible.
Visible, like standing out.
Yes, when you achieve massive success, you stand out. You step out of the crowd.
Into the primitive nervous system.
To the primitive nervous system, being highly visible equates to being a target for predators or a target for judgment.
Wow. So the thermostat pulls you back into the shadows just to keep you safe.
Exactly. It's a survival mechanism that's severely out of date.
So what does this all mean for our physical bodies then? Because it sounds like we can logically want success and we can have incredibly detailed plans.
We can read all the strategy books in the world.
Right. But something beneath the intellect is pulling the emergency brake.
Yes. And this leads us to a really vital concept, the biological container.
The biological container. Unpack that for me.
It is vital to understand this. The mind is capable of holding all the right beliefs, quoting all the right philosophies, and aiming for the stars.
The mind is infinite.
But the physical nervous system does not run on logic. It does not care about your vision board.
It really doesn't.
It runs entirely on one binary question. Is this familiar or is this a threat?
Familiar or threat. There is no gray area for the nervous system.
None whatsoever. To a nervous system calibrated for a lower baseline, a massive influx of success, visibility, or even profound unconditional love, it all feels incredibly unfamiliar.
And because it's unfamiliar, the nervous system triggers the panic.
The exact same biochemical panic as it would if you were suddenly cornered in a dark alley.
That is insane. Your body literally floods with stress hormones in the face of your own victory.
Your body cannot tell the difference between winning the lottery and being chased by a lion.
I always think of the nervous system as a physical vessel, like a glass pitcher.
That's a great visual.
Right. If you have a vessel that is rigid and small, you can only pour a minor amount of liquid into it.
Obviously.
So if you suddenly experience an immense, rushing influx of positive intensity, a massive promotion, a beautiful new relationship, a sudden windfall of good fortune.
That tiny vessel cannot contain it.
Exactly. The energy overflows, and that overflow manifests as panic, overwhelm, or a complete physiological shutdown.
You literally lack the physical capacity to hold your own greatness.
So what's the solution?
Well, it means the ultimate prerequisite for sustained achievement is not acquiring more external skills.
It's not another online course?
No, it's expanding that internal biological capacity.
Okay, how do we do that?
We have to voluntarily subject ourselves to manageable, calibrated discomfort.
Okay, stop right there.
What?
Voluntarily subject ourselves to manageable, calibrated discomfort. That sounds like a beautifully academic way of saying something terrible.
It's not terrible, I promise.
What does that actually look like for me, the listener, tomorrow morning? Do I just stare in the mirror and shout affirmations? Do I, sleep on a bit of nails?
No beds of nails required.
How do I stretch this vessel?
It is far more practical than that. By deliberately placing ourselves in unfamiliar but safe situations, we slowly stretch the walls of that vessel.
We're training the nervous system.
Yes. We teach the deepest parts of our neurology that the unfamiliar does not automatically equate to danger.
I need a concrete example. Because right now it sounds a bit abstract.
A concrete example would be initiating a conversation you have been actively avoiding because it feels awkward.
Oh, I hate those.
Most people do. Or, if you are terrified of being visible, it means speaking up in a meeting to share an unpolished idea.
Without apologizing for it being unpolished.
Exactly. And then simply sitting with the physiological discomfort of having people look at you.
You just let them look.
Yes, you feel your heart race, you feel the heat in your face, but you do not run and you do not apologize.
You just sit in the physical sensation.
You sit in it and you let your body realize, oh, I'm terrified, but I'm not actually dying.
That makes perfect sense. It's like exposure therapy for ambition.
That's exactly what it is.
If I force myself to tolerate a small amount of visibility, my nervous system eventually stops sounding the alarm.
Yes. Over the passage of time, this recalibrates the thermostat. It allows it to hold a greater magnitude of success.
You gradually expand the capacity of the vessel.
Exactly. But here is the critical secondary step.
There is step 2.
Always. While we are expanding the vessel to hold more, we also have to look at what is currently taking up space inside of it.
Oh, I see.
We have to look at the invisible leaks.
Yes, the emotional backlog. I absolutely love this concept.
It's a game changer.
Imagine a massive, complex network of hidden processes silently draining a supercomputer's power.
Like when your laptop fan sounds like a jet engine.
Exactly. You sit down to use your laptop, and the fan is just screaming, the mouse is lagging, the screen is frozen.
And you have no idea why, because you only have one single document open.
Right. But if you look at the activity monitor, there are countless background applications running, consuming all the memory.
And in human terms, this is our emotional backlog.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
Unprocessed resentments, unexpressed truths, the lingering guilt from ancient mistakes.
The apology you never delivered.
Yes. Or the boundary you never enforced. They all operate in the exact same way as those hidden computer programs.
They just eat up the RAM?
They consume vast tracts of our cognitive bandwidth silently running in the background.
It's exhausting just thinking about it. We wonder why we sit down to execute our most important work, and we feel so unbelievably heavy.
So devoid of energy.
We think we need another cup of coffee. But the reality is that the lion's share of our mental resources is actively engaged in suppressing that emotional backlog.
We are using our vital energy to hold down a beach ball underwater.
Which takes so much muscle.
It is a staggering drain on human vitality. Every single time you push away an uncomfortable emotion or avoid a necessary confrontation, you are opening a psychological program that refuses to close.
So how do we force quit those programs?
By clearing them. Through radical honesty, processing the grief, or simply having that incredibly uncomfortable conversation with a friend where you admit you were hurt.
And doing that frees up the bandwidth.
It frees up a magnitude of energy that feels almost supernatural.
It feels supernatural because you finally have access to your full bandwidth again. The computer fan finally stops screaming.
Exactly.
And a massive part of that clearing process involves what we can call a motivation audit.
Yes, we have to relentlessly audit our pursuits.
To separate what from what?
To separate our inherited obligations from our genuine internal desires.
It's astonishing to realize how many of us are pouring our life force into goals that we never actually chose.
That is a fundamental trap of the modern era.
An inherited obligation is a goal that society, your peers, or your culture simply expects of you, right?
Yes. It is dressed up to look like personal ambition, but it is entirely external.
Let's give an example of this because I think people confuse the two all the time.
Let's do it.
Let's say someone is pouring an ocean of effort into becoming a partner at a massive law firm.
A very common scenario.
They work endless nights, they sacrifice their health, and they tell themselves they are highly ambitious.
But if you strip it back...
Right, if you strip it back, maybe they only went to law school because it was an unspoken demand from their parents.
Or because it was the only path their peer group actively respected.
Exactly. And pursuing an inherited obligation results in an agonizing, constant friction.
It requires that exhaustible willpower we mentioned earlier just to take a single step forward.
You have to drag yourself to the desk every single morning.
And if you do manage to achieve it, if you actually make partner, it results in a hollow victory.
A pinnacle that depletes your soul rather than sustaining your energy.
You reach the top of the mountain and realize it's the completely wrong mountain.
And you're just exhausted.
Genuine desire, on the other hand, possesses a completely different energetic signature.
How does it feel different?
It isn't always easy. In fact, genuine desires can be incredibly demanding. But the key is that it pulls you toward it.
It pulls you instead of you pushing it.
Yes, it sustains itself, providing a deep, quiet endurance even when the external rewards entirely vanish.
You don't need to hype yourself up to do it. The work itself contains a spark of vitality. So
Exactly.
you have to strip away the noise. We have to look at our goals, our massive projects, and ask a brutally honest question.
Which is?
If no one on earth ever knew I achieved this, if I could never post about it, if my parents never found out, would I still want it?
That is the ultimate filter.
If the answer is no, you are running on the agonizing friction of an inherited obligation.
Absolutely.
And speaking of noise, we really have to talk about the universal law of disorder. I think this naturally leads us to the physics of clarity.
Yes, the principle of entropy.
Entropy. I remember that from science class.
It is a fundamental law of existence, borrowed from physics but perfectly applicable to the human condition.
Lift completely unchecked, what happens?
All closed systems naturally and inevitably drift toward chaos, mess, and disorganization.
A garden does not weed itself. It just becomes a tangled wilderness.
A physical room does not naturally organize itself. Dust gathers, mail piles up on the counter, and clutter just accumulates.
Order does not occur accidentally.
Never. Order requires the deliberate, intentional application of energy, and this applies just as ruthlessly to the human mind.
Cognitive entropy is incredibly real.
It is. Think about your daily life.
Okay.
Every single unmade decision, every neglected obligation, every half-finished project sitting in your garage.
Every text message I left unread intending to answer later.
Yes. Each of these is an open loop, and the human brain vehemently hates an open loop.
Why does it hate it so much?
It treats every unresolved item as an active, lingering threat that must be continuously monitored.
Oh, so it goes right back to the background applications draining the computer.
Exactly. If you accumulate enough of these open loops, you generate a massive, suffocating accumulation of cognitive disorder.
People often come to me and say, I have lost my motivation.
And 9 times out of 10, they aren't lacking motivation at all.
They are simply buried under the crushing weight of mental clutter. They have too many open loops.
Yes. And here is where we usually make a fatal error. This leads us to the subtraction game.
The subtraction game. Because culturally, we are conditioned to believe that the solution to confusion and overwhelm is addition.
We always want to add.
We think, I am overwhelmed, so I need to buy a new planner.
I need to download a new complex project management software.
I need to read 3 more books on time management. We genuinely think the path will illuminate itself if we just add more structure.
But clarity is not acquired by adding more information to an already overloaded system.
That is literally pouring gasoline on a fire.
Clarity is the bedrock that naturally emerges when you subtract the noise.
The most exhausted, chronically overwhelmed individuals I know are often the ones endlessly adding new strategies and obligations to systems that are already buckling under their own weight.
To find clarity, you don't need a new color-coded spreadsheet. You need to start closing loops.
Make the decision. Abandon the project. Send the awkward email.
Or officially declare that you are never going to learn how to play that guitar sitting in the corner of your room and just sell it.
Just close the loop. The relief of officially abandoning a project is wildly underestimated.
It is massive. And you know what the ultimate generator of open loops is? The greatest source of cognitive entropy.
What?
Perfectionism.
Oh, perfectionism. We love to brag about this one in job interviews.
We reframe perfectionism as possessing incredibly high standards.
Right, like, my biggest weakness is that I just care too much.
It is a phenomenal disguise for fear.
That's all this.
Fundamentally, yes. Perfectionism is a severe lack of clarity and a refusal to face reality.
It is the belief that you must reach absolute pristine certainty before you can move forward.
You want to guarantee the outcome before you even take the risk.
But waiting for absolute certainty in a chaotic world is literally a mathematical guarantee of failure by delay.
If you are waiting for all the traffic lights in the entire city to turn green before you leave your driveway,
You are never going to start the engine.
perfectionism is just cowardice in a tailored suit.
Ouch. That stings, but it's true. So what do we do instead?
We have to embrace what we can call the threshold of sufficient certainty.
The threshold of sufficient certainty. What does that mean in practice?
It means that the moment you cross a boundary of sufficient confidence, even if your plan is incomplete, even if you don't know exactly what step 7 will look like,
You must act.
yes, you have enough information to take step 1.
But why? I mean, why not wait a little longer to refine the plan? It feels safer.
Because taking action allows the real world to act as an immediate filter. Ah.
The friction of reality offers infinitely more valuable feedback than endless, pristine internal deliberation.
You can sit in your room for an eternity, imagining how a conversation will go or how a product will be received.
But the real world destroys illusions instantly. Action generates data. Hesitation only generates anxiety.
Action generates anxiety.
Action generates data. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
It changes everything.
But as we begin to act, as we begin to subtract the noise, close the loops, and elevate our output, we crash into another invisible barrier.
Yes, we do.
And I really want to spend some time here because this is the one that catches people completely off guard.
The collective thermostat.
Exactly, the collective thermostat of our social circle.
We discussed the internal thermostat earlier, but social groups share a baseline equilibrium as well.
Like families, friend groups, departments within a company.
They all silently agree on what is normal. They agree on how much ambition is acceptable.
How much complaining is standard.
And what level of health or wealth is appropriate for, quote, people like us.
And when one person in that group suddenly elevates their output, breaks their old limits, and starts executing at a massive scale.
It profoundly disrupts the equilibrium of the entire tribe.
Say they stop drinking every weekend, or they start a business, or they begin setting firm boundaries.
Your sudden forward movement creates a glaring mirror. And that mirror reflects the stagnation of everyone else around you.
And human nature dictates that the group will attempt to restore order.
They will exert a subtle yet immensely powerful gravitational pull to drag the outlier back to the familiar baseline.
And it's so confusing because it rarely looks like outright malice.
Your friends don't sit you down and say, "We hate that you are succeeding."
No. It looks like gentle, mocking teasing about your new habits. Oh, look who is too good for pizza night now.
Or it sounds like feigned concern over your workload. Are you sure you aren't pushing yourself too hard? You look really tired.
It manifests as skepticism about your new goals or subtle guilt trips for missing trivial gatherings.
They aren't consciously trying to destroy your dreams. They are simply trying to smash the mirror so they don't have to look at their own lack of motion.
They just want the room temperature back to comfortable.
Exactly.
So what is the listener supposed to do? If you realize your social circle is an anchor dragging you down, what is the solution?
It's a tough situation.
Are we supposed to become bitter recluses and abandon everyone we know? Because that sounds miserable, and it triggers that exact fear of isolation we talked about earlier.
No, you absolutely do not need to become a hermit. But you must actively curate your environment.
Curate it how?
You have to seek out a balanced equilibrium of peers who naturally operate at a higher frequency.
You need to intentionally immerse yourself in a collective thermostat that pulls you upward simply through the osmosis of being around them.
Proximity is a force multiplier.
If you are constantly fighting the gravitational pull of a stagnant environment, your activation energy for any meaningful task remains devastatingly high.
It's like trying to run a marathon through waist-deep mud.
It is. And this concept of activation energy brings us beautifully into the architecture of relentless execution.
Let's define activation energy because it is the actual linchpin of taking consistent action.
I like to use the analogy of a match strike to understand this.
It's a perfect visual.
You can hold a match, and the potential for a massive roaring fire exists right there in your hand. The chemical composition is perfect.
But that potential means absolutely nothing until you apply a specific spike of friction.
Yeah, you have to ignite the chemical reaction. That initial friction, that strike against the box, is the activation energy.
And the fundamental rule here is, the lower the activation energy required, the easier it is to start the fire.
Makes sense. If the matchbox is damp, the activation energy required skyrockets.
You have to strike it over and over, exhausting yourself before you even see a single spark.
I used to look at highly productive people and wonder why they seemed to execute so effortlessly, while I felt like I was trying to start a fire with damp wood in a rainstorm.
You assumed they just had a massive superhuman reservoir of willpower that you were missing.
I did. I thought they were just built differently.
That is the most common misconception regarding productivity in the world.
What's the truth then?
The secret is that highly productive individuals do not possess a larger reservoir of willpower. They have simply architected their environment to drastically lower the activation energy required to begin their work.
They prioritize catalysts over discipline.
Exactly.
So what does a catalyst look like in daily life?
A catalyst is anything that reduces the friction of starting. It could be a fixed, unvarying routine so you never have to expend energy deciding when to work.
You just eliminate the decision entirely.
Right. It could be a physically isolated environment dedicated solely to deep thought.
What about physical habits, like working out?
If you want to exercise in the morning, a catalyst is laying your clothes out the night before and placing your shoes literally by the door.
By removing all those microscopic choices and physical barriers, starting the work becomes the path of least resistance.
They make it harder to avoid the work than it is to simply do it.
It's engineering inevitability. If you have to dig through your closet for gear, then find your keys, then drive across town in traffic to reach a gym. The activation energy is massive.
Your internal thermostat will absolutely convince you to stay on the couch.
But if the shoes are beside the bed, the friction is almost zero.
And once these individuals start, they guard that focus fiercely.
We are talking about untouchable, isolated epochs of focus.
Yes, we live in an era where attention is constantly fragmented by digital intrusions, notifications, emails, the perceived demand of immediate availability.
We have accepted a state of continuous partial attention as normal,
But it isn't normal.
a mere fragment of the day. A highly concentrated epoch spent in a state of absolute, unbreakable focus yields an exponentially greater harvest than an endless tide of fragmented, shallow work.
I think of it as the difference between a laser cutting through steel and a flashlight illuminating a wide, shallow puddle.
Oh, that's good. The laser and the flashlight might output the exact same magnitude of light energy.
But the laser focuses it into a singular, impenetrable point.
To achieve that laser focus, however, we must harmonize with our natural rhythms, right?
Ignoring our biological and physiological rhythms is an act of profound self-sabotage.
This is where the hustle culture narrative gets it so incredibly wrong.
Yes, the human mind is not a linear machine. It does not operate at a flat, constant hum.
It experiences natural, oscillating peaks and valleys of energy throughout the day.
Attempting to force deep, strategic thinking during a biological valley, say mid-afternoon when your body naturally desires rest, is an exercise in futility.
You are striking Gamp wood again.
Exactly. The architecture of execution requires aligning your most demanding, highest leverage tasks with the cresting waves of your mental energy.
If your mind is sharpest in the quiet of the early morning, that is when you do the terrifying, highly complex work.
Conversely, you relegate the trivial administrative tasks, replying to routine messages, organizing files, to the natural troughs when your brain is already fatigued.
This alignment alone produces a massive multiplier effect on your overall output.
And we have to state this forcefully because it is consistently ignored in favor of shiny new tactics.
The bedrock basics.
Sleep, nutrition, and stress management are not optional wellness luxuries.
They are not things you do after you achieve success.
They are the fundamental biological bedrock. They are the physical operating system upon which all cognitive software runs.
I cannot emphasize this enough. Attempting to execute highly complex, deeply creative tasks on a severely degraded physical foundation is literally like trying to run a supercomputer on a dying battery.
You cannot out-discipline a compromised biology.
If you are chronically exhausted, your activation energy for everything is impossibly high.
And your thermostat is set to panic mode because a tired body always feels vulnerable.
It is the ultimate limiter on the vessel we discussed earlier.
A physically exhausted body cannot stretch to hold more capacity. It is completely consumed with mere survival.
And once that biological bedrock is stable, the actual sequencing of tasks becomes paramount.
Think of it as a domino effect.
I love the domino analogy. If you align a series of dominoes, striking the largest, heaviest one first requires a significant push.
But if you strike that most difficult, highest leverage task first thing in your day, you trigger a cascade of momentum.
You topple the largest domino, and the resulting kinetic energy effortlessly knocks down all the smaller, easier tasks that follow.
The momentum carries you. But if you reverse that sequence,
Oh, this is what everyone does.
if you begin your day by absorbing the scattered priorities of others, scrolling through infinite digital feeds or answering trivial messages,
You instantly fragment your attention. You shatter your focus before you even begin.
you spike the activation energy required for the deep work. And you burn your cresting wave of early energy on things that simply do not matter.
By the time you get to the massive project, your battery is at half capacity. You let the entropy win before the day has even truly begun.
Which is exactly why execution must be viewed over the long arc.
We must transition from the frantic tactics of the daily grind to the grand strategy of a lifetime.
We need to explore the long game. And fundamentally, we need to understand the illusion of the plateau.
This is one of my absolute favorite concepts, and I think it brings so much relief to anyone listening who feels like they are working incredibly hard but going absolutely nowhere.
It is a vital perspective shift.
Imagine a pot of water placed over a massive heat source.
Mhm.
For an extended period, you are pouring immense energy into that water.
But if you look at the surface, the temperature stagnates.
The water isn't boiling, it looks perfectly still.
If you didn't understand the physics of what was happening, you would conclude that the heat was broken and your effort was entirely wasted.
You would just turn off the stove and walk away.
And that is exactly what most people do with their ambitions. They ask themselves, why does progress seem to halt right at the exact moment I am working my hardest?
Right. You are putting in the hours, you are doing the difficult things, and the external world is giving you zero validation. Nothing is changing. Why?
Because of the secret of latent transformation.
Latent transformation.
During that plateau, the energy you are applying is not wasted. It is simply performing invisible structural work.
It's breaking down old molecular bonds to prepare the system for a sudden, magnificent shift in state.
A phase transition.
Exactly. Human progress follows this exact, deeply non-linear path.
It is almost never a straight, steady climb where every single day is slightly better than the last.
It is a long, often frustrating plateau of invisible accumulation, followed by a sudden, radical vertical leap.
The water is still, and then it boils violently.
Quitting during the plateau, which is what the vast majority of people do out of despair, means abandoning the profound structural work right before the phase transition occurs.
That reframes everything, doesn't it? The plateau isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that the energy is being absorbed for a massive leap.
But the cultural glorification of an endless, unbroken grind is so incredibly toxic to this process.
We are told to hustle continuously, to never stop pushing, to sleep when we're dead.
It's a fundamentally broken philosophy. A linear grind inevitably shatters the biological system.
Sustainable brilliance requires a rhythmic cycle. It demands periods of intense, concentrated output followed by absolute, profound rest.
It's the oscillation between tension and release that builds muscle, both physically and cognitively.
And within that profound rest, there is an incredible value to something we have completely eradicated from modern life.
Intentional boredom.
Yes. When we constantly stimulate ourselves, when every spare second in an elevator or a waiting room is filled with looking at a screen or listening to audio, we occupy all available cognitive space.
By allowing the conscious mind to idle, by embracing true, unadulterated boredom, we provide the subconscious the vast open space it desperately needs to connect disparate ideas and forge creative breakthroughs.
The answers you are desperately seeking during the intense grind of the workday often effortlessly surface during the silence of a long walk without your mobile device.
I have experienced that so many times. The solution to a problem I stared at for hours suddenly pops into my head while I'm doing the dishes in total silence.
And as we take action and then rest, we are generating the ultimate engine of growth.
The compounding power of feedback loops.
Action, observation, and adjustment form a continuous loop. You strike the match, you watch how it burns, you adjust your grip based on the heat, and you strike again.
We often think the people who win big in life are the ones taking massive, reckless leaps of faith, the grand gestures. But that's a cinematic myth, isn't it?
It is entirely a myth. The victor in any complex endeavor is almost never the one taking massive, uncalculated leaps.
Who is it then?
The victor is the individual who completes the largest volume of iterative cycles. Each loop calibrates the system, making the next action slightly more precise.
Over the passage of time, this rapid iteration accelerates growth exponentially.
It is the steady, unglamorous accumulation of micro-adjustments that ultimately conquers mountains.
To maintain that steady accumulation, though, we have to talk about integrity.
This is crucial.
And I want to unpack a radically different definition of integrity than what we usually hear.
Usually we think of integrity as mere morality.
Right. Being honest with others, not stealing, keeping your promises to your friends.
But in the architecture of the long game, integrity is something much more mechanical.
It is the structural soundness of the promises you make to yourself.
Think of it in engineering terms. If a bridge lacks structural integrity, it collapses under its own weight, regardless of how beautifully it was painted.
Exactly. Every single shattered personal commitment creates a micro fracture in your self-trust.
If you promise yourself you will wake up early to execute a task, and the alarm goes off, and you choose the comfort of sleep instead, You aren't just losing an hour of time.
You are actively downgrading your internal thermostat.
You are providing your nervous system with irrefutable evidence that your word cannot be trusted.
You are teaching your subconscious that your intentions are meaningless.
And when your subconscious believes your intentions are meaningless, it will not supply you with the energy or focus required to achieve them. It withdraws the resources.
So if someone is listening to this and realizes their self-trust is in ruins, their bridge is full of microfractures, how do they rebuild it?
Rebuilding this structural integrity requires the flawless execution of remarkably small daily promises.
You don't rebuild a shattered foundation with massive sweeping gestures.
You don't say, starting tomorrow, I'm going to work out for 2 hours a day and write an entire novel. That will only lead to another failure and a deeper fracture.
You rebuild it by laying one perfect brick at a time.
Yes, you make a promise so small it is almost trivial, but you execute it flawlessly. You promise to drink a single glass of water the moment you wake up, and you do it.
You prove to your deep neurology day after day that your intentions are absolute.
And as we lay those bricks, as we build that sound structure, we must surrender our time anxiety.
This is perhaps the hardest part for anyone living in the real world. The paralyzing fear of falling behind.
It is a pervasive modern phantom.
It is. And it's easy to say, surrender your timeline when you're speaking in abstractions. But for a listener with a mortgage, career pressure, and a society that glorifies youthful achievement, letting go of the timeline feels completely impossible.
We look at a snapshot of someone else's success, we compare it to our messy, behind-the-scenes reality, and we invent a fabricated timeline that tells us we're failing.
It is terrifying to let go of the illusion of control. But we must understand what time anxiety actually does to our execution.
Time anxiety forces you into short-term reactive thinking. It pulls you out of the deep, invisible structural work, the plateau, and pushes you toward hollow, cosmetic victories just so you can feel like you are moving.
You start prioritizing looking successful over actually building something sustainable.
Releasing the frantic need to control the exact timing of our success paradoxically removes massive amounts of internal friction.
When you let go of the artificial deadline, you stop pulling the seeds out of the dirt to see if they're growing.
You allow the phase transition to occur organically. And ironically, when you stop suffocating the process with anxiety, it often happens much faster.
Surrendering the timeline is the ultimate act of trusting your own execution.
It is the absolute acceptance that if you manage the inputs, the focus, the clarity, the biological bedrock, the iterative loops, the outcomes will eventually manifest with overwhelming force.
You cannot force the water to boil faster by yelling at it. You just ensure the heat remains constant.
Precisely.
So let's bring this all back to the individual we talked about at the very beginning. The person on the kitchen floor at midnight, fighting over the dishwasher.
The person who hit their stride, tasted massive success, and then watched it all inexplicably derail.
We can now see that the sudden drop in momentum wasn't a curse.
It wasn't a profound lack of character, and it wasn't an immutable, shameful flaw.
It was simply their internal thermostat doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting them from the unfamiliar.
It was the system working perfectly, just based on outdated programming.
But now, armed with a structural understanding of activation energy, the courage to expand their biological container, the patience to endure the invisible work of phase transitions, and the commitment to forge unbreakable structural integrity.
That same individual possesses the actual blueprint to shatter their identity ceiling.
They no longer have to be victims of their own automated defense mechanisms.
What's truly fascinating here, and what I think is the most liberating takeaway, is how this completely reframes the human experience.
We spend an ocean of our lives trying to fight against our own nature. We treat ourselves like disobedient animals, trying to whip ourselves into compliance with guilt and shame.
But once you understand the physics of your own mind, once you see the mechanics of the thermostat and the open loops and the biological container, you stop fighting the machine.
You put down the whip and you start redesigning the architecture.
It leads to a profound final reflection on what we are actually capable of. For most of our lives, we treat our capabilities as a fixed, finite resource.
We think we have a set amount of talent, a set amount of energy, and a predetermined limit to our joy.
All of which must be anxiously managed and guarded against failure.
But what happens when we abandon that entirely? What if, instead, we view ourselves as a boundless ecosystem?
If the thermostat is merely a learned setting, calibrated by a past we did not choose, then it can be recalibrated.
And if the vessel can be expanded through voluntary discomfort, then it has no absolute limits.
The only true limit to the magnitude of our impact, our peace, and our success is the architecture we are willing to consciously build today.
That is an incredible paradigm shift. It means the ceiling isn't real. The plateau is just an illusion hiding a massive structural transformation.
We invite you to step out of the panic.
Recognize the sabotage for what it is, release the phantom anxiety of falling behind, and trust the invisible heat you are generating.
The catastrophic snapback doesn't mean you're broken.
No, it just means the tension is showing us the edges of a vessel that is finally ready to be expanded.